Thank you everyone for coming today. With the agenda that we had, I'm surprised that we're that many. I've retrospectively changed the title of my presentation to spruce it up a bit. Before I start my presentation, I'll just first of all remind all of you that Sitecore 7 was released this week, and I expect you all to go and download it and play around and do cool stuff. Also, we have some prizes for the competition today. So there's a year's subscription to Razzle. There's a year's license for RAZL from Hedgehog Development, and these cute little puppets. So pay attention. Right. Item serialization, that's what we're going to talk about today. What is it? So, what you see on the screen here is the, I guess, the base, the most basic form of item serialization. So, a textual representation of an item that we can have as items, item files in a disk hierarchy. We can have it in a package. That's, I guess, the first incarnation or way of packaging, serialization that Sitecore had. I don't know if any of you remember the packaging system, the old one. That's the one I grew up with. That was very painful. Later on, Sitecore introduced update packages, which is a slightly more elaborate package that was used to distribute upgrades. And the update packages are a little bit more sophisticated. They can remove items and they can add items, and of course they can also, packages and update packages can also carry files. We're not going to talk about that today. We're only going to talk about the actual Sitecore items. So why would we want to bother with serializing things to disk or into packages when they live happily in the database? Any suggestions as to why that is a thing that we should pay attention to and spend our energy on and sit here and talk about tonight? We have one in the back there, at the back, yeah. Source control, that's a good point. Any other ideas? There's one very obvious, I think. Moving stuff around. So instead of doing elaborate selects in the database, if I need to deploy my items on another instance of Sitecore, hey, I'll serialize them either as something on disk or in a package as we talked about. But it's a handy way of getting things from A to B. Also, if you, for instance, if you wanted to create a module and put it on Marketplace, and you want to distribute some items to go with your code, that'd be, an example. As we quickly touched upon, versioning. I feel very strongly about this, and I think we should all be doing this. If we're not, we should think about what we are doing. For most deployments, that is a dependency in your code on templates, perhaps some system items that you rely on, and that should go hand in hand when you do a deployment. Also, your item should have a single version of truth for this version of the code that you have. So if you rely on a database as where you store your items, then you haven't got that tracking and that tie-in with your code. And one thing that you should probably not put in version control is editor-owned content. And I don't know, perhaps it's controversial. What do you think? Does any of you put editor, when I say editor control content, I think of any piece of any item that is handed over to the editors. As soon as they touch it, I won't get involved with that anymore. So that would typically be things under content and media. Have anyone got a stance on that? Do you include it in your source control?
We don't put editor-owned, but we put in like some development
Okay, so bootstrapping for that's a good point, because if we did our job really thoroughly, then editors would be able to right-click anywhere in the tree and then add content with the right insert options and all of that. But I think we all know that sometimes there are some budgetary restrictions. I think is that the PC word for I'm in a hurry. And you don't do that. You create sort of a framework that the editors can start using. What do? You just add it to version control. How do you ensure that it doesn't end up accidentally in a build overwriting stuff?
The TDS you can exclude various build configurations.
That's a good point. TDS is a good tool for this and has some facilities for that. I will say that it doesn't cater for the scenario where an editor deletes a piece of content, which is a realistic scenario that I say this test content that was provided, I'm going to get rid of it, and then next time you build, even though you have deployed once, well, if it's not there, it will deploy it once. So, but that's one way of doing it. Personally, I think that editor-owned content should perhaps live in a separate sort of workflow to your regular template items and system items. Any other ideas around this? I think this is a very exciting subject. There must be other people who are beyond Matt and me here that does some of this. Does anyone here use TDS? That's one of them. Great. Okay, well, we'll move on. We'll look at the tools, because it's not just about TDS. We could have a full session on TDS, and we've had that before. Let's not bother with that. So if we start by looking at the tools that are included with Sitecore, as said, there's the old school package manager and installation wizard. The most handy thing in here is actually that you can create package definitions, so you can start reproducing the same package again and again and again without having to add every single item into it. You can just choose some points in the content tree that you want to include. As I say, I don't use this much these days. I'll use this if it's a package from Marketplace or module or something. But I have found in the past that I cannot keep track of all the stuff that needs to go into a release. I forget stuff. I've hit that point in my life where it doesn't really go that fast up here. So I'll leave stuff out and deploy, and that didn't work, and go back and put in 3 more items and then have the same problem again. And I can do that for a whole day. What I am using a lot, especially after TDS was released, is the Update Installation Wizard. So this is an interface for installing update packages. As said, yes, I've got the text here on the slightly more advanced features. One of them is actually that update packages can be on a field level, so it doesn't have to update an entire item. It's very nifty. The Update Installation Wizard lives on the Sitecore admin, together with this collection of, I don't even know what to call them, these sort of homeless admin tools that weren't worthy of the rest of the interface. That we always say to everyone, oh, turn these tools off, you don't want to expose them. But for installing packages, this is definitely the tool that we have out of the box for installing update packages. Another tool that lives in this homeless shelter is the serialization ASPX, and this is a tool for generating an item hierarchy on disk. And actually, if you look inside a regular package, you will find a very similar item hierarchy. So it's just a case of how it's sort of wrapped up. Well, and a package is basically just a zip file and a zip file. So now you can open it and have a look inside. The serialization.aspx has one nifty feature, and that is that it can serialize pre-configured. I don't know if you can see it, sort of in the middle section on the tool here. And you can define a piece of configuration in Sitecore that tells you which part of your content tree you want to include and exclude. And can anyone here have a good guess at why that is handy? Well, I'll help you a bit. As we talked about before, you don't necessarily want to concern yourself with content and media. So that could be one pattern that you would put in this preset that is called. One thing that is missing here is a way of deserializing with these presets. So when you deserialize your database or part of your tree structure, it doesn't really look at that configuration, it just looks at what is on disk and can I get hold of that. So this is my sort of wow slide. As you see, I've been doing 3D with my screenshots. I don't know, is that annoying? Or is that alright? Should I do that in the future? It's all part of trying to sort of put some life into this item serialization thing. Anyway, on with the wow. There we are. Ooh. Right click on the ribbon and down here there's options thing, developer. This is the only one that's not enabled by default when you log in with admin B, as we all do on databases. I don't know, do you do that?
Yeah.
I've probably asked this question many times before. We shouldn't. We really should create a user with our own name. So each developer have their stamp, so that we can hunt them down, and combined with you know, versioning your items and using blame, then we've got a perfect witch hunt. Anyway, when you enable it, you get this bit here. So part of the ribbon that will allow you to serialize and deserialize things. So you can see you have more than one option for deserializing. You can either update or revert, and then you can decide whether you want to work on a tree or an item or the entire database. There's also, I'm not actually not sure why they're not showing up here. There are ways of serializing users as well. I'll come somewhere else. But we're only talking about items today, haha. So that's my get out of jail. Oh yes, and there's a great serialization guide on SDN. It's about 15 pages and crammed with good information. You should all have a look through that if you're serious about doing some item serialization. Then when you serialize something, as we talk about with this tool, it ends up on disk. And I've taken this is a very fancy screenshot here of some serialized data. You can see there are some .item files and corresponding folders. So the folders will contain children of the example here would be that you have children of content lying under the content folder. And up here, are you getting this? This is all of my PowerPoint skills. The path that I'm trying to illustrate up here, you have a website, and again, I'm doing something a bit special. I've used app data for my data folder. Does anyone do that?
Yeah.
A couple. We had a discussion about it yesterday, whether you could just use a relative path to .data. I don't know. Let's see. That's what I thought. I like this way, and the app data and app config and that sort of thing, they're all protected by default in IIS, so you should be good. Unless someone has tampered with it, it's fine. So we'll wander down the tree, and in the data folder we'll find a serialization folder. Master, that's the database that I've serialized, and this is the content, the root of the master database. And we could go on like this for a long time, but I've been told by Megan to hurry up. So I will just, instead of going all the way down the tree, give you a little warning. There is a limitation in Windows, so it's not something that that we've done to sort of hamper your work. But it just means that if you have very long names, I used the example yesterday. If, for instance, if it was a catalogue of Welsh cities, towns and stuff like that, and then underneath that you would have districts and then street names, you know, you would be able to have 3.5 items before you ran out of characters somewhere in your serialization tree. And as I was doing this preparation for this presentation, I came across the serialization folder path max length. I'm not sure why, I think I just forgot to do it. I didn't test it, but I put it in here as something to have a look at. I also looked at the suggestions in the serialization guide. That's actually the only thing in the serialization guide that didn't really make any sense to me. They listed extension points. One of them was a path util for serialization. And it's true enough that that is the class that's used for you know, accessing the path and generating that. And I thought, oh, can I create something where I do like a fancy Git style 6-digit short hash for all of the items, and then do some really long, really deep item hierarchies. But I realized that it's not an extension point. It is basically just, this is the class that we have strong references to everywhere in our code. So right now I think that setting is your best option for limiting your path lengths. And I hope you found that useful. A little bit of piece of information there. Another cool thing that you get with Sitecore out of the box is the ability to serialize on the go. So you can set up handlers for safely moved and versioning, where when some of these things happen, it will be reflected to disk directly. So you could say, if you for instance have your templates under version control in the serialized hierarchy, then when something changes, you can see that you need to add that to your version control system and do... I hope you understand where I'm going with this. Anyone not on board with what I'm trying to say? Good. There's not much communication coming this way today. Only Matt, and that's because I asked him earlier to participate. So, okay, so now we've covered some of the things that come with Sitecore. Those are the things that you get when you install the product. You don't have to do anything special for that. One thing that is it's not that external to Sitecore because it's being developed by us. The Sitecore Rocks. It replicates some of the serialization features that you have in the developer toolbar. And also you can create macros and hook them in with the serialization, so you can do some cool stuff there. I didn't really think of a good example for this because I was busy looking at all sorts of other things to do with serialization. And actually one of the things that I thought was much more interesting was the Sitecore Nugget. It's an add-in to Rocks, I think, which enables you to blast items into your Sitecore instance when you install NuGet packages. And if you want a good example of that, and try and blast some items, I say blast because there's no would you like to, or should you want to override. It is basically just get out of the way or you're going to get run over. So the Sitecore MVC contrib project, I'll say that again, the Sitecore MVC contrib project, looking for contributors right now. This is mainly driven by Kevin Obi and myself, and the rest of the Sitecore MVC task force. Well, we're the one doing the work, they're just coming up with all their demands. But we've created a project on GitHub that is open for contributions. As long as your contributions are well documented and have test coverage. Right? Oh, did the barrier just go very high there? Okay. Now I don't know if anyone knows, but Sitecore MVC is sort of my pet project. Not that I created it, but it's a special interest of mine. And I hope to convert all of you one day away from web forms. Yep. So hands up if you're going to visit the GitHub project and start participating. Yay! We've got 3. So another tool, this is the obvious one that everyone thinks of when we talk about this, bringing serialized items into your development and version control and deployment scenario. TDS, I really like TDS, and I don't get to use it as much these days as I used to. When back in the day when I was a lonely Sitecore contractor, I used it all the time. It has some brilliant tools for visualizing the difference between what you have on disk and what's in your database, or a database, I should say. And actually, the price tonight, the RASL license, is, I guess, based on their work in TDS. This is just a database comparison rather than comparing with serialized items. It can generate complete update packages that can go in the update package installation wizard with files and items and everything. And I'm not ashamed to admit, when I worked out how to get this working and set up with all of my systems, then I basically just binned my build scripts. I think that didn't take me long, and I never looked back. I had elaborate things that I was doing to generate my build artifacts. I stopped doing that because TDS would do it for me. So that's very handy. It integrates well into Visual Studio. It's feature-rich. Code generation, another little thing that I bang on about. Code generation, generate strongly typed items based on your cycle templates is, I guess, the key scenario that everyone interested in this thinks about. It also has some sweet things like dealing with the path lengths by having item path shortening in a more selective way than changing the way that the path is generated. And as you can see, there's only one catch. That price is correct as of yesterday. To be honest, I think that the product is worth that. I'm not here to sell TDS, but it is a good product, and if you get the opportunity to work with it, you're very lucky. Moving on swiftly into the area that I call Alienware. So, I forgot to change the slide. It's actually called Sitecore Courier, and someone yesterday said, "Oh, is this like that other product with you? They also have something like this." And it could be. I don't think there's any issues there. It's an open source project by a guy called Alexander Doroshenko. He's done several open source projects that are very good. He's done some PowerShell tooling, and he's got some good blog posts out on his blog. And before I release the slides to Ingrid, I'll make sure to put in the URLs for that on the last slide. So what is Courier? Courier is a tool. It's actually two tools. It's got a web runner and a console runner that will look at the difference between two serialized item trees and generate an update package based on that information. So imagine the scenario: install Sitecore. By the way, we're going to do this afterwards. I normally jump in and out of my demos, but this time I'm going to try and save all of the demoing till the end. We're trying something new. So we'll have a look at how it works. Basically, you install a Sitecore and you quickly serialize whatever it is that you want to, for instance, your templates. and you put that to one side. Then you start destroying or developing or whatever you do. And at some point, you run Courier against your serialized items and that thing that we just put to the side. So now you can get a package that will give, when you install it on a Sitecore, will give you the difference of the two trees. So imagine I add a template under user-defined templates, and where are you going? See you later. No one else is leaving. So I lost track of what I was saying. And also I can see I've got some random notes down here from our last presentation. Check out SOCO 3, show controllers. I don't know. Sorry. Yes, so you add a template under user-defined, and then Courier will create an update package with that template added. If you were to go in, let's say, under Sitecore templates system and remove something, not sure why, but if you remove something, then it will be registered in the package that you generate with Sitecore Courier that this needs to be removed from the installation that it's being applied to. So that's very handy. And I hope that you, especially if you use TDS, you can see, I see where it's going with this, because this is sort of what TDS is doing, except that you're the one deciding what goes in and what goes out. Here, Courier will sort of, based on this diff, decide what goes in and what goes out. So, it's not as sophisticated as TDS, but I think it's well worth looking at. So, Sitecore Courier. The second Alienware I looked at is something called Unicorn. This is created by a guy called Kern Herskind in the States. And I must admit, I struggled with getting it to work, and we had a little bit of back and forth for me to actually build the tool that he's created and put out there for all of us to enjoy. The GitHub address is there. He's addressed one problem with the Sitecore serialization handlers, in that he's created a set of those that will respect the configured presets. So if you in your presets have said we're only going to serialize Sitecore templates, then it won't serialize everything else. Also, he has created a sync tool that will, again, looking at the presets, deserialize things from disk into a database. And I saw in the code there were some comments about the logic being slightly tweaked from what the normal rules are. Did I get to say? When you deserialize with Sitecore, you can either update or revert. If you say revert, that means make things as they are on the disk. If you update, it's a little bit more picky and it won't destroy as much. You should really look at the intricacies of this in the serialization guide, because I can't remember them all off by heart. But that was just going back to something we talked about earlier, and now back to Unicorn. So the web-based tools sync tool is for bringing your development instance up to scratch, up to speed with what you've just gotten from you've done a git pull or whatever, and a git checkout, and got into a right state where you're not in sync with what's on disk. Then you can use this tool. And as for every usable presentation I do, I make an effort to make something technical, a little project. And this time we actually managed to do 3 projects in the UK team. That's with thanks to Kevin and Raoul. They both had some good ideas. The first one, Kevin did a HTTP endpoint for installing update packages. It should say update packages, not packages. So you could say that we already have an endpoint, and it's called the update installation wizard. But the difference here is that you can basically just call a URL with a path and say the package is here, do it, and it'll basically just give you a status flag saying. So it's sort of a REST way of installing an update. And I hope that you have now jumped to conclusions and said, haha, that means unintended update package installation. Great, because that was what I thought. And I quickly added a feature request on his GitHub repo saying, can we also have a publish? So that would be a small thing to put in there, but very practical. The second thing on the list here is rules-based serialization. So I was talking to Raoul about, I was trying to figure out what it was this unicorn beast was all about. And we were looking at the configuration for including and excluding items. And Raoul has a thing about rules that I think he spent too much time looking at that. So he quickly cooked up some rules and actions for handling serialization. And he said that I was allowed to put this work on his on my GitHub repo for this user group presentation. I will do that. I haven't put his stuff on there yet, but I will this weekend. And I'll show you what it is that he's done. He's even sent me an update, and he said that he is writing unit tests for it, which is unusual for him. So, but I think it's commendable. I didn't write any unit tests for the last bit here, basically because, well, this time I ran out of time. I'll do like Raoul. I'll you know, deliver them after we've shipped, sort of thing. I'm not quite done with this transit business. So transit is transform serialized items with T4. And it is basically one assembly that gives you, you could in your T4, I don't know, is everyone on board with T4? Cool, we do code generation every day. I like code generation. It's just, it means that I can sit back and do nothing and the computer does all the work. And I could do that all day. Just sit there and watch the computer spin and generate classes and variables. And so you could just reference Sitecore kernel in your T4 template and start using the serialization namespace, all the classes in there. I put a wrapper around it because it doesn't cater for the main scenario that I see in code generation, which is give me all the templates and have some knowledge about inheritance, what are the combined fields, what are the local fields for a template. So some of those things that would be handy to have, and it's true you could write all of this into your T4 template and have a lot of code there, but I thought, rather than we all do it, let's all do it in one place and then just use that. So that was the thought behind that. And I don't know if you remember, but it's almost a year and a half ago I did my first user group presentation, which was an hour and a half on, what did I call it? Code generation with T4, Visual Studio and TDS. And I had many more people leave the room. So, but that was, and I think it's a funny story. And even though the camera is on, I will tell it to you. That was a couple of months before Hedgehog came out with their TDS v4 that supports code generation. And I don't know where they got the idea from, but I'd like to think that it was me. I'm not sure. It could be that it was already in the pipeline. We both had a great idea. I think it's a shame that they didn't allow for the code generation in TDS to sit on build. They chose not to, based on it can be an annoyance that every time you build, then it has to do a little bit more work. And I just say get a little bit faster computer, and then it's not a problem anymore. For this project, I set it up so it was something that happened automatically on build. So every time you build, you refresh your code, which is based on the serialized item. So again, you get this coherence between your code, your serialized data, and whatever you generate based on that. I don't see the output of a T4 generation as something that necessarily needs to be version controlled. That's just something that happens as part of the build process. We don't version control our OBJ files or whatever. You know, there's something that's produced and consumed, and then we forget about it. So that's my stance on it. I don't think that it's you know, I don't understand the process where you would have to right-click and say generate, and then produce a CS file that you then put under version control. You lose some of the coherence. That's my take on it. So if the guys at Hedgehog is listening, so note to you. I can talk to the camera. It's a bit weird. So I can see that my next slide is thanks for listening. So I'm not done. We will do some demos, and oh, this is new. Hey, look at this special effects.
Is it on a Mac?
This is Windows. Hang on, we'll just do like this, and we're back in the room. Okay.
So was it serializing in the background? Now they serialize.
I'm not sure what it was doing. It was probably me needing a faster computer. So where do we start? Okay, so I've had to put some notes together for this. We'll start with unicorn. Right. I'm sorry. I've got a little child at home, so I'll say it sounds like that. Okay, as you can see, this is a right mess. This is all of the stuff that we did yesterday. I guess the first thing to show you with regards to unicorn is I know where I'm going. And here's the unicorn, and in here, because I think I did it right, and I created a specific config for this. Just do this. So, what have I done here? Okay, I've created a configuration patch file that adds a serialization section on the Sitecore and puts in a default preset, and it says include the master database and on this path here. And this is a little bit counterintuitive. It is described in the serialization guide, but you have an include element in your config, and underneath that you have excludes. And underneath your excludes, you can have includes, and underneath your includes, you can have excludes, and so on and so on and so on. When you think about it, you can understand why that is practical. But initially, I thought there was an error in that it wasn't a list of includes and excludes. I get it now. So also, it wasn't well documented. I think I'll put this config file up on GitHub as well. I've just put some notes on what you can actually exclude. So you can do it on path, template name, template ID, and item ID. And I think the only one that's really described is the path. That's how I remember it anyway. I thought it was handy to put in here. And actually, you could have combined this with the handlers for automatic serialization. But I didn't, because we were going to look at Unicorn, and if we scroll down the list here, where are they? Perhaps not. Doesn't matter. I know that this one is set up with Unicorn. So Unicorn has a piece of config. It's probably ended up in the web config, basically it enables the handlers for the serialization and deserialization. So if we just revisit this, remember we're including Sitecore except things that live under content. And I'm just going to try and do like this, and then jump back up the tree. Can you see what's going on? Or is it a bit... hide this. That's the thing. Oh, forget it. We'll make it bigger. Serialization. Master. Sitecore. So we actually have some stuff under here under content. We'll just we'll remove this so you can see that I'm not cheating. Underneath Sitecore there is now not much. And if I'm to go down underneath the our example was user defined, and say we'll insert a new template, and we will call it new template. Then something appeared over here in the serialized data folder. It's the new template. Hey, so first victory of the evening. If we were to do it underneath the content, so the excluded part, we'll do here sample item, insert, then nothing happened over here. So as expected, it's not being serialized. So that was step one of Unicorn, that the automatic serialization respects the preset. The second part of it is the update, the sync tool. And you can see here, yesterday I did a sync, which seemed to go very well. And we'll see if we can make it sync again. And we'll go into the... Actually, we'll start by going into the template and make a change that we know. So something that we know to look for. We will go into the display name and say hello. So now the display name for this item is hello. And with a bit of luck, from this, you should be able to find. Did I miss it? Ah, there we are. So the display name, hello. And you would say, haha, we'll change it to yellow, and then save, and then we will run the sync tool like this. Oh, did you mean? Yes, that's what I meant. So let's have a look and see what happened. Oh. Can you follow? Can you see what it is I'm trying to demonstrate? Yeah. Okay, that's good. Because as people pointed out to me yesterday, that sometimes my demonstrations have a little bit of subtlety, so it's a very small change we're looking for. As you can see, I've had a complete demo fail because it's still hello, it's not yellow. What's wrong? But I actually did this on purpose. You may not believe it, but it was on purpose. When it does the deserialization, it actually looks at timestamps and revisions. Oops, that was a bit optimistic. So I'm just going to tamper a bit with the information in here, and then we've got the updated here. We'll say that this will updated sometime in the future. 14. There we are. That's in the future. So if we now do this one more time. Oops. There we are, and then it says something more. It says that the item used to find a new template version 1 in English was modified, and it does some comparison, and then it says it forced it to do something. So that should give us a subtle change in. So of course the scenario isn't that you go in and tamper with the file. The scenario is that you had a new file from source control that your colleague had tampered with or changed. And here we are. You can see that it's now yellow. So I know it's not a massive change, but that was a demonstration of the two mechanisms in Unicorn. And back to the demo script. Serialization rules. Actually, I have the old version of this because I was sent a new one just before I walked out the door. It is lying here on desktop. There we are. It's from the rule from today. I don't know. Shall we install it or shall we just go with the one I have? Yay! Let's tie shoelaces together and say, run, boy, run! Okay, well, you are the boss. We'll do like this. So I had installed his tool here. Actually, no, let's do something completely different. Let's start sim. Sim. Oops, location not available. I'm thinking as fast as I can now. I can't remember what I did with it. Ah, there we are, sim. Does anyone here know of sim?
Yes.
You should check it out. I like this tool. If you, like me, have a habit of trashing your instances, then this is just a tool for you. So this is the Sitecore Instance Manager, and as you can see here, I'm quickly getting rid of an instance, and yeah, well, it's not there anymore, is it? Then we will create a new instance. As you can see, we'll just set up a fancy Sitecore 7 image here, or 6.6. There we are, we will not need this, we will just do this. So the Instance Manager is practical for installing and removing items. Is everyone leaving?
No, I'm going to toilet.
Okay, there's more food and I'm quiet now. And we'll just open the browser. So in no time at all, we have a clean instance of Sitecore. And oh, it's not the content editor I'm looking for. Remember, guys, you asked for this. We could have gone with the one we had, but yeah, I didn't. I just gave you the choice. So we need to upload a package quickly. So you guys, this one next. Choose a file. Come on. Go on. Have I found a fail in my plan? Right. I know what to do. We'll just do it manually. Right. Data packages. There we go, quickly installing, and you can see it has been tagged by the author himself. Cool stuff. I have no idea what to expect because, as I said, I haven't seen this before. But I saw this stuff that he delivered for me for yesterday's presentation. So I'm going to have a look in the rules section of Sitecore, and you can see that there's some item deleted, item saved things here, and nothing has been added here. Do we need to have a look at what he actually sent us? Items. Oh dear, he's gone to town with this. It's way different than what it was yesterday. I wish he was here to explain. Serialization home. There we are, there's some of it. Conditions, let's have a look at that. Okay. I think we'll have to just live with an explanation. Basically, he created actions and conditions that you can add to your item saved, item deleted for doing the serialization. You can have these rules do all sorts of crazy things based on the existing rules or your own custom rules in the rules engine. So you could say, you know, if it's a template, if it's in this part of the tree, and you know, all sorts of other criteria. If it's updated by a specific user, all these sort of things. So you can create your own rules basically. And it's the same sort of principle as with the presets, except that I think there's a lot more flexibility in this way of doing it. So it's not just based on path and ID, it's whatever you want it to be. So if you have some very exotic requirement for serialization, this is the way to go. And I'm very sad that I didn't get a better explanation of what to expect from this. But you, remember, you chose this. We'll swiftly move on. What? I asked, would you like to see what I have prepared, or would you like to see what just fell in my inbox an hour ago? But you're right, it was a little bit of a rookie mistake to remove the instance that was working and just go from blank. So I hope that you learned a little bit from that. Courier. So this was the other thing I was talking about, how to generate update packages. And I've had to put in these long paths. I just cloned it off GitHub and did my own build of it, which is why it's on this weird bin debug path. You could probably, you know, put it somewhere more sensible. And I am looking for a PowerShell console, so do like this. I was already there. Okay, and you can see I haven't cleaned up after yesterday's. What's that? Speaking for another process. Okay. Never mind. We will slightly change our demo. So you run. This is the console runner. I think that's the most interesting out of the two runners. You can also use a web runner, but I can see how a console runner would fit into your build process. And I'll copy this text here and put it in here, and we'll just say that this is update 2. And the computer does what it's best does. It lets us wait a little bit. And you can, I don't know if you can see, but this is what I talked about earlier by, you know, having a sort of a, this is how it looked to start off with, and this is what it's looking like now. What is the difference? So that's one way to look at that. And if we do like this, and have a look here, just open with. So as I said, both packages and update packages are basically just zip files and zip file. And you can see that this one has added items. I'm just going ahead to let you know what is it that we're expecting when I do the next part of the demo. So under Sitecore content home, there is a sample item, and underneath the sample item there is a sample item. Doesn't make any sense, but that's the difference between those two item hierarchies. So when I have the update package, I could go to the update installation wizard. I could also use the stuff that Kern did for us. See, that was step 3. Examine the update package with 7-zip. I've been very good at keeping notes. It's not true. When I opened this file up for yesterday's presentation, these 3 points were blank, and this title was wrong. I had no idea what I was doing. A bit like today, only for the part where roles set me up to fail. So, yes, ship. Create a site. So we'll do that again. We will just see. Did I close the? I did. Listen. We'll create an instance. We'll call this ship. And again, now there's a bit more quiet here. In the installation, you get the option of installing modules. So you have a repository of all your Sitecore versions and all your modules. You can install that as you go. This is something that's grown out of Sitecore support, of course, because they have a need to do this all the time, specific versions, da 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 da. But even as a development tool, I find it nifty. And say install the default project file for me. It's 2010 here. I haven't updated this VM for a while, so we'll fix that as we go along. I'm sure there's a 2012 project template as well. So just wait a little bit, tell some jokes, and we'll do like this. We'll say open the website folder. That's here. And it's not the recommended way of doing things. In my book, it's not a best practice to dump your code together with your website. Some people say, it's alright, I'll just write some git ignore rules and everything's dandy. But that wasn't fair, it was just upgrading the project. So I'm not trying to hide anything from you. But I actually prefer doing my development outside the website. What do you guys prefer?
Inside.
Inside?
Yeah.
Outside.
Because if you make a change, you have to like...
oh, you are in the team, I just do my git ignore rules and then everything's happy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because otherwise you have to build until you see the changes.
Yeah, that's right.
It can take quite a long time.
Yeah, get a faster computer. That's my answer for everything. Which is also why I'm very poor, because I just buy a faster computer all the time. It's not true, this is very old. So what are we doing? Yes, we created a... Oh, actually, this may be a demo fail because I'm on a 3G connection here, because it actually requires me to be online. I was trying to think before. Can I do this without being online? Yeah, that's fine. Oh, actually, I was right. I can do it without being online. It's been a long day. We are talking about ship. And ship was this HTTP endpoint for installing Sitecore update packages with sort of a RESTful way. And I'm just going to see if I can find it here. That was the solution file, that's not what I want to show you. Actually, I'm not going to show you. You can do a git clone and build it as elaborate instructions, and they're almost right. And I have told Kevin what the right way of doing it is. It's just I didn't understand his instructions. That's the true story. So it could be read both ways. Let's just have a package console and do a paste. Okay, what I'm going to do in this project here that was installed with the Sitecore instance, I'm going to install a package. It's called Sitecore ship, and the reason I don't need to be online is because I built the package locally. Haha. So that was the disconnect. Let's do this. Ooh. I'm sure that this actually happened yesterday as well, and it also happened when I knew exactly what the problem was. I just got so excited about doing it that I forgot one thing. I forgot that this old school project here is for the wrong framework version, so we'll just change the target. Then we'll just do like this. Look at it, as if it never happened, and then success. I love success. So what actually happened? As you can see on the references, we had an assembly and we had some config added. And if we go to the website, we'll take this one here. We'll say so the reason why I'm just going into Sitecore is again to just have one of these demos with a very subtle difference. And whilst I navigate to home, just think about what we looked at with 7-zip, what was in that update package. Also, I failed on this yesterday. Just remember to build. That always helps. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So you can see I have done this before. And I'll do it one more time. I will, actually, I won't do it here. Just do like this, and then do it over here. So, not much happened, which was actually, oh, sorry. Some things there. Sorry, I'm just turning on and off things now. What I was, if I had the mental capacity for it, I would have shown you the HTTP headers for the response, so you could see how this lovely RESTful thing installed. Instead, I'll do the easy thing. I will creep back into Sitecore and open the content editor. And lo and behold, underneath home, there's a sample item, and underneath it, there's a sample item. Now, this may seem like a ridiculous exercise, but if you paid attention from start to finish, you could see a deployment workflow starting to come together here. And I do think, especially for the people who haven't got the TDS sort of money lying around, that these are some of the tools that you could be using to start integrating item serialization into your daily development and deployment workflows. Which probably, let's just have some windows flying by here. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And like this. It's very small now, isn't it? That's actually the reason why I don't flip-flop in and out of the VM. Because last time we did this, the VM kept changing resolution, and that was a bit confusing. I'm not going to stop my demo here. You will have to suffer for a little bit longer. The most exciting, the pinnacle of this demonstration, transit, that's what I did. Right? So we'll just, well, I also did the presentation and some other stuff, but this was where I spent the most of my time. I do this on the train to and from work. So that's a couple of days gone there. So this, and again, I've done this before for a user group presentation. I'm not sure why I do it, and I think it's to do with the order of things in Visual Studio when you create projects. I've created a console project. Not that I needed a console project. I even called it Transit Console. Anyway, Transit, this is the assembly I was talking about. It has some interfaces that represents items. It's got a util. Everything needs a util. Okay, it's bad naming. I'll fix that. More importantly, it's got template and template field that will cover off this whole thing with template inheritance. And also there's some handy tools for naming things like namespaces and classes and members and stuff. So I'll show you a very simple example of what you could do with a TT script. First of all, note the second and third line here, where I reference two DLLs. And in the first import, I import the transit namespace. So, I'm sorry, I thought that I would have better code highlighting here, but this is the way that it comes with Visual Studio these days. So, in my TT script, I blew up a item tool. I've done the groundwork for my testing, so I'm using some dependency injection. And then I do some property injection. Oh no, I was just passing a parameter to a deserialized method. Gives me a list of all the items in this item tree that lives out here, somewhere random on the disk. And then I get a list of the templates, and you can see here I have some link going on to just decide what parts of the, so what's it saying here? It's excluding any template where the parent ID is a template. So if you have a template on a template, I don't know if you can, let's do a quiz. What is the scenario where in the template tree you have a template under a template? Anyone?
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, we'll do it properly. In the templates section of the item tree in Sitecore, what is the scenario where you have a template item that is the child of a template item? I was thinking of standard values. It is the standard value item for a template is a template. Yes, funny but true. And that sort of fouled up my first demo, so I excluded it. I could also say, for instance, only give me the things that resides in the user-defined part of the template tree. I was a bit lazy, I just said in that part of the tree. But it's a string comparison, so it will work. Okay, so for each template, output something namespace, and then I use one of these happy helper methods. And I pop in an ID, a class, and I do something with fields. Basically, I'm doing a strongly typed representation of my templates. Woohoo! So that could look something like this. I've got many of them. We'll go to the top, an easy one. Underneath common, there is something called folder. Underneath sample, there is something called sample item. A sample item has a text and a title. So I'm not going to read through all of them. I am going to delete all of them. And this is the test CS file that lives underneath the template. And then we'll do a build. And the computer is thinking. And then it says, something changed. Bam, bam. And then everything is back. So Again, this is a subtle demo. I hope you understand what happened. So every time I press build, before it builds this project, it quickly generates this test CS file. Of course, what you generate here is completely up to you. You could generate you probably generate some glass style things. I spoke to Mike Edwards, who does glass, yesterday. He has some concerns about references, and I have some ideas why that's not a problem. But you could generate whatever types of items here. It could be the custom item pattern or something like that.
Okay.
So yes.
You said that you wouldn't check that in or add it in or...
Probably not. Just go, every time it builds, it will overwrite it.
So how would you kind of like reference it going forward? You just have to like build it?
Well, when you press build, it's produced. If you delete this and press build, it will be produced.
So on your build set, would it need access to the site for instance to be able to build?
No, it will need the transit and the Sitecore kernel DLL somewhere. As you can see, this TT file here uses these files. I'm just pointing. It would have been really slick if I had a relative path here, but you know, if anyone in the room has an idea of how that actually can work, I've seen, you know, Oleg who does this T4, he press block rows and block rows of how that's not a problem, but it is a problem. I cannot get it to work. It's the second time in my life I'll try to get that to work and I cannot do it. Feel free to pitch in. This is on GitHub on the repository called usergroup.serialization.
So is that, do you have server event handlers so when you, every time you save a template, it's updating the serialize, it's re-serializing them?
It could be in connection with that. In this scenario, I'm just pointing to a serialize tree. I'm presenting this in isolation, but it could be. I think the scenario is that your serialized data is part of your version control, and that this would read out of what is under version control. How you get it into version control is another side of the story. Using the handlers is one way.
So in the MS build, is it kind of like before you're defining the...
Oh, actually, yeah, I could show you that. So I have it open here. Because I have been faffing around trying to get these relative paths to work. So it is relying on some extensions that are freely available from Microsoft. It's something to do with the DSL extensions for Visual Studio. Not sure how it ended up there, but you can see I'm saying transform on build true. Only if it's out of date, I don't care. Build it do it every time. Override, yes. And then, as you can see down here, I am importing some text templating targets. Oh, this one even does a little message. Not sure why I did that. Clearly, I was trying to work out what was going on with the path. So you have to do a small modification to your CS brush file, but it's just MS build. Okay, hang on. I can hear someone clapping. Yeah, not quite yet. Now you may clap. Clap, applause, what's it called? I don't know, I'm a foreigner. I don't know. Clap? No. That's what you say in Danish. Clap. So, any other questions? Now, regardless of what you think of this presentation, I need good feedback. As I tell you every time, my boss reads these feedback forms. No, that's not true. It's actually only English. He gives me the scores, and then I sit there and think, oh, must do better next time.
Does the Sitecore.ship, does that create an anti-package as well?
No, and the package and anti-package concept from Rocks is based on the old school packages.
Oh, okay.
But it does publish after.
No, but I suggested that to Kevin that that would be handy if you could also, if you use the same endpoint to publish. Well, then I'll just say thank you very much. I think I'm a little bit over time. Sorry for that. Sorry, Megan. Thank you.
Thanks.